Hi, I'm Katelyn, and I did a presentation on Rachel Carson. Her early life. She was born on May 27, 1907, in Springdale, Pennsylvania. She grew up on a farm, which gave her a lot of first-hand experience and knowledge of nature and wildlife, and that really spurred her love for those things. She graduated from Pennsylvania College for Women in 1929 and studied at the Hull Marine Biological Laboratory. And she received her MA in zoology from Johns Hopkins in 1932. A position she held. She worked as a professor at the University of Maryland. She worked and was hired by the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries to write the radio scripts during the Depression, featured articles in natural history for the Baltimore Sun, and she was also the editor-in-chief of all publications for the U.S. and Fish Wildlife Services for 15 years. Fighting for a cause. Carson was attacked by the chemical industry and in some government as an alarmist, but courageously spoke out to remind us that we are a vulnerable part of the natural world, subject to the same damage as the rest of the ecosystem. Testifying before Congress in 1963, Carson called for new policies to protect human health and the environment. Testifying her findings before President Kennedy's Science Advisory Committee was one of her last public appearances. The committee backed Carson's claims, and Carson was able to help make some recommendations towards the Senate policies before her cancer became widespread. Writing. She loved to write, and she wrote pamphlets on the conversations and natural resources and edited scientific articles as well. In her free time, she turned her government research into lyric prose. Her first article, Under Sea, and then in a book, Under the Sea, in 1941. That was her first book she wrote. And then in 1952, she published her prize-winning study of the ocean, The Sea Around Us, which was followed by The Edge of the Sea in 1955. Carson resigned from the government services in 1952 to devote herself to solely writing. She wrote several other articles designed to teach people around the wonder and beauty of the living world, including Help Your Child Wonder in 1956, and Our Ever-Changing Shore in 1957, and planned another book on the ecology of life. Disturbed by the use of chemical pesticides after World War II, Carson reluctantly changed her focus in order to warn the public about the long-term effects of misused pesticides. In Silent Spring in 1962, she challenged the practices of agricultural scientists and the government and called for the change in the way of the humankind view the natural world. Alright, so the quotes. The first one is from Silent Spring, her most famous book and still most well known. It says, "The more I learned about the use of pesticides, the more appalled I became. I realized that here was the material for a book. What I discovered was that everything which meant most to me as a naturalist was being threatened, and that nothing I could do would be more important." The next quote is also from Silent Spring, and this says, "This notion that science is something that belongs in a separate compartment of its own, apart from everyday life, is one that I should like to challenge. We live in a scientific age, yet we assume that knowledge of science is the prerogative of only a small number of human beings, isolated and priest-like in laboratories. But this is not true. It cannot be true. The materials of science are the materials of life itself. Science is a part of the reality of living. It is what and how and why everything in our experience. It is impossible to understand man without understanding his environment and the force that we have molded him physically and mentally." And the last is a quote that I just really liked. It's not from any of her books, but just something she said. And it says, "It is not half so important to know as it is to feel." Her legacy. Rachel Carson died in 1964 after a long battle against breast cancer. Her witness for the beauty and integrity of life continues to inspire new generations to protect the living world and all of its creatures. Here are my references, and we're good.